Okay, so welcome to today's session then. This afternoon, it is just this afternoon, isn't it? 12:01. We are going to be talking about managing mental health at work, okay? And really, there'll be some moments, some opportunities for you to share your thoughts, your ideas, share best practice, and feel free to unmute yourself, or whether you want to put your thoughts or ideas in the chat. That's absolutely up to you. My facilitation style is quite relaxed, quite conversational, which I think, particularly when we're thinking about the topic of mental health, is quite important. So here we go. Let's get started. So makes sense to introduce myself, really, doesn't it? So I'm Emma Tomes. I'm the senior L&D consultant here at RBHR, and I am responsible for delivering training and learning opportunities all around mental health, and also deliver a range of modules and learning activities for management development as well. You've got 3 bullet points on this slide. So the first one is lived experience. So I've personally had my own experience of managing poor mental health, and I've also experienced a bereavement suicide, which was what really inspired me to become a mental health first aid instructor. So here at RBHR, we do deliver mental health first aid training, and a whole host of other training as well. I'm also a suicide prevention tutor, so I can deliver suicide first aid as well. And really, that's all around how do we help people to have conversations about suicide, and in a way that actually prevents people from dying by suicide. So a whole kind of range of things that I will deliver. My background is actually in kind of retail. So I've worked for organisations such as Specsavers. I used to deliver quite a lot of training in state agency world. So quite a range of different people that I've trained over the years. And I also have some of our team with us today. So you may notice that we have some of our team here on the call today. We're a great team. And today we've got Liam on the call, so HR assistant. I think Alison is dialing in as well, so our managing director. And we've got Clean as well, who organises all the digital marketing. So has helped us with promoting this event, and which is why you're here now. So that's all great. I think having a good team is so important when we're thinking about mental health and well-being, having good people around you to support you to be a success at work. So what are we going to look at today in this short kind of taster session for you? Well, our learning outcomes for today are, we're going to define the most common workplace risk factors for stress, okay? So it's important to have an awareness of what those risk factors are. And when I'm training mental health first aid, I often talk about how the mental health first aider role is very much about being there in support at point of crisis, but also we can help with as a mental health first aider, we can help with pointing out potential risk factors. And we'll look at that in a little bit more detail. Okay. We're also going to talk about recognising the signs of poor mental health. So we're going to have a look at that. And we are going to discuss tips for having helpful conversations about mental health. And a lot of managers that I speak to, that I train, they often say, they're really worried. They don't feel they're an expert in mental health, so they often avoid having those kind of conversations, or they're worried about getting it wrong. So I'm going to share some tips with you today around how to get it right. And finally, we're going to explore best practice for managing mental health at work. So feel free to also share your thoughts, your best practice as well, so we can learn from each other there too. So to start us off, it's a good place to start is to explore what is mental health. Oh, brilliant. Liam's got Alison. That's great. It's good to know. Thanks for sharing that in the chat. So here's your invitation to let us know in the chat if, what comes to mind when you think mental health. Let us know in the chat box if you can find the chat button on Zoom, and then just share some of your thoughts. What do you think of when you think about mental health? What does it mean to you? There we go. Got us started there, Michelle. Well-being, yes. A sense of well-being. Thank you. Got some others coming through. Being balanced. Yeah. Rational. Being your normal self. Yeah, absolutely. Liam's popped in there. Yeah, sometimes we can experience anxiety. And Charlotte's popped in there, self-care. Charlotte, are you okay to come off mute, actually? Oh, you were saying about having tech difficulties. Can you give us a little bit more in chat? Sorry, it's okay. I totally forgot. Can you give us a little bit more about self-care and what your thoughts are on that one, if you don't mind? And we'll go to Claire and we'll just ask Claire about being your normal self. Are you okay to share your thoughts on that one, Claire?
Hi, yes. I think it's just about really appreciating and knowing who you are when your mental health is good, so that you recognise, or other people are able to recognise, when things tip for the worst, if you like. So it might be that you're quite a normal, outgoing sort of person, but actually you've spent a period of time being very insular and closed, and there's warning signs going on there, and you're probably going to talk about that later. But I think it's for self being able to recognise that's not just a blip of a day or two, that's something that might need addressing.
Yeah, absolutely, spot on. Thank you, Claire. And you know, this is huge, isn't it? There's so many elements when we think about mental health and well-being. There's the, you know, understanding ourselves, recognizing when we're not quite feeling ourselves. And then there's another element, which is how do we recognize when other people aren't feeling themselves? Because sometimes we may not notice our own decline, or when we may be experiencing difficulty. So there's kind of that two approach to it. But having that self-awareness, and that takes pausing and checking in with ourselves, which we're going to talk about later. Charlotte's popped in the chat. Thank you so much, Charlotte. A lot of the time we spend a lot of time trying to help others and not taking enough time to look after ourselves and our own well-being, and this can cause a lot of anxiety and stress. And we can be very hard on ourselves. Totally, yes. Being kind and compassionate to ourselves, recognizing our limits. And I'm sure many of you, probably even this week, have had to sit and think about and reprioritize what you've got on your plate for this week. So this constant kind of check-in with ourselves is going to be so important. So when I am working with mental health first aiders and training people in mental health, we need to recognize that mental health is part of our overall health. So, you know, if we were to actually just combine physical and mental health into health, and we just talk about health because actually they're so closely intertwined, and actually it's a good barometer for the quality of our mental health. And this is shown by various numbers of factors. So how we think, how we feel, how we behave, how we cope with the ups and downs of everyday life, how we feel about ourselves and our life, and how we see ourselves in our future, and how we deal with negative things that happen in our life, and how stress affects us. And also having that appreciation for the fact that we all differ so much. So, you know, how I may cope with the ups and downs of life may be different to somebody else, and recognizing that that's okay. We just need to have that awareness. So I've mentioned a number of times now that check-in is really important. So what I'm going to do, some of you, and depending on what kind of device you've dialed in on today, I'm going to share a poll with you. And what I'd like you to think about, hopefully this has come up on your screen. I want you to think on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you? So 1 being very low and 10 being fantastic. Have a think about what would your number be today, right now in this moment, okay? So have a go. This is an anonymous poll, so no one will know. So you can share your kind of number in there, and then I can, we'll just see the results. Okay, so I can see we've got some numbers coming through. Now, there's a reason why I've asked you this particular question, and we'll come back to it in the session. Okay, just going to give it a few more moments to see if we can get anyone else in on that poll. I know sometimes it's like, yeah, where am I? It can take a few moments to think, am I there? I think we've got one more person to answer. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for participating in that. So let's end the poll. Let's have a look at the results. So as you can see there, we've got our highest percentage there at 29%. So 29% of us are feeling about a 5, so that halfway point. And as we can see, it's quite spread out, isn't it, across the scale. Now, I'm going to come back to this because this is a really helpful tool that you can use for yourself, but also with others. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that later on. So if you want to make a note of what your number was, and we'll come back to that a little bit later in the session. Okay. Right. Thank you for participating in that one. Okie doke. So I've got a question for you. Have a little think about this. So, and feel free to share your answers in the chat. What proportion of people with mental health problems believe that workplace stress contributed to their illness? So is it a third? Is it 2/3? Or is it a 5th? So let us know your thoughts in the chat. What do you think? Have a go. There's no prizes, so go for it. Okay, right. We've got a strong preference towards 2/3 there. Rob, are you okay to come off mute? All right. What's your thoughts then? Why are you thinking 2/3?
I think it's a place where some people don't feel in control. There's other factors that they can't always influence. Yeah, that could be play a role in that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Rob. So yes, there's a lot. And, we often hear this in workplaces, isn't it? It's sort of, be aware of what you can control, what you can't. There's a lot of trying to let go and understanding that there are some decisions that are made elsewhere, which can lead to uncertainty and can lead to stress. So you would be right here. So the answer is 2/3. So according to Time to Change, about 2/3 of people with mental health problems believe that long hours, unrealistic workloads, or bad management actually had a real negative impact on their condition. And what we need to remember is actually that this is a contributing factor and not necessarily a cause. So this is a contributing factor to people experiencing poor mental health. What we tend to find is that often the root cause may be at home. And it could be potentially, family relationships, bereavements, all kinds of different factors that could also be a cause of stress. Okay. So let's have a little look at what some of the risk factors are within a workplace. So according to a report done by the CIPD, these were some of the common risk factors within a workplace. So I'm going to share these with you now. So working long hours, not taking breaks, having unrealistic expectations. And this is often something that we look at in our management development courses around assessing workload, reevaluating workload, and how do you manage how you've distributed workload. A lack of control over work, so Rob's point there. Poor communication can often lead to stress, this uncertainty of how to do something or whether something has been understood correctly. Lack of support. We get a lot of people talking about how, and particularly in this CIPD report, around how they felt that their manager wasn't asking questions about their well-being, that they were just checking in around what they were doing from a work perspective, and job insecurity, and also lone working. So, not having those opportunities for connection and to really have great conversations with other people at work. And we've also talked about that there are some external factors that may have an impact. I've touched on a couple already. So things like bereavement, moving house. What other major life events do you think? Feel free to pop them in the chat, or if you want to unmute, what other major life events do you think could impact somebody at work? Yeah, illness is yeah, definitely. Yeah, change of job. Change in responsibilities as well, you know, change in hours. Yes, Leslie, yeah, good new baby. And actually there's a really good friend of mine who campaigns for fathers' mental health. And he talks about how often do we ask fathers at work how they are once they've had a baby. Often we'll ask, how's mum, how's baby? So he is a great campaigner for talking about men's mental health at work, particularly after having a new baby. Change generally, yeah, absolutely, Claire. Divorce, thank you, Liam. Yes, can definitely have an impact. And these things don't always happen overnight either. So these can go over a long period of time. And also retirement. So, you know, often we associate retiring with, you know, being a good thing, right? But actually that lack of routine, losing connections, so not seeing people every day at work, can also increase someone's stress around retiring too. So one to be aware of. So these are the things that we really need to be listening out for and being able to spot. So I've got another question for you, lots of questions today. So thinking about workplaces, whose responsibility is it to manage mental health at work? What are your thoughts on this one? Does anyone want to unmute and share their thoughts? Who do you think it should be responsible for this?
Hi, it's Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Hi. I think it's ultimately a joint responsibility, but I think it's something that line managers particularly need to have tools in their armour, if you like, to be able to have those conversations, because often people have not even talked to anybody about things. They may not even be aware of what causes them to feel like they feel. So if we can give line managers really great training to have those really open, honest, comfortable, relaxed conversations, then people are more likely to want to open up, and then you can have that ongoing discussion about noticing, you know, if I'm like this, I know that this happens, and being able to follow up. So I think ultimately it's both parties, but line managers have to take the lead, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that awareness for everyone, isn't it? So, you know, as an employee, I need to have an awareness of what am I doing and what impacts my mental health and well-being. My line manager needs to know how to have conversations with me and ask me about my well-being and what's helping and what's not. And then organisationally, you know, this is why we see a lot of organisations implement mental health first aiders and well-being champions and things like that, is to work on the culture as well. So making it a place that people can talk about what's going on for them, and actually being aware of what support is in place within their workplace, whether that's an employee assistance program, whatever that looks like. So starting those conversations is a whole culture approach. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, ultimately we're all responsible, right? We all need to work together to support mental health within the workplace. So how do we spot it? How do we spot poor mental health? This is a question that I get asked a lot, and you know, having that awareness to be able to recognize it in yourself, but also to be able to recognize it in others. So what we commonly see, I'll just reveal this for you. We see often there's self-neglect. People may be talking about feeling hopeless or helpless. We can often see a change in appetite, so that it could be overeating or undereating. And what you might notice in your colleagues is a drop in confidence as well. And looking for reassurance. So if you're working with someone who previously has been really confident, and then suddenly they are asking you to check their work, they're looking for reassurance, that could be a sign that they're experiencing a lack of confidence, which could potentially be led by anxiety, for example. We may see a whole range of emotions in the workplace. They may feel tearful. And back many years ago, when I used to deliver training, I used to work in, as I said, in retail. I used to do a lot of training in contact centers as well. And, you know, it was very much the culture that it was kind of like, leave your problems at the door. And then when you come to work, you're at work. And thank goodness that has changed, because what that means is when people can come to work and they can feel their emotions and they, you know, they can be themselves, they're more likely to be productive. They're more likely to be happy. And also we see an increase in productivity and creativity as well. So what we're noticing is that we're, you know, through the training that we're doing, through mental health awareness and also training mental health first aiders, is helping people to be comfortable to be able to sit with other people's emotions. So back in the day, you know, when I used to deliver training many years ago, we might have said, you know, if someone started crying, we might say, oh, you know, go to the toilet and sort yourself out, or I'll leave you for a bit for you to sort yourself out. Whereas actually now it's about how do we get comfortable with sitting with somebody and, you know, supporting them when they're in distress. So these are some of the things that we look at in our courses. We might also see a change in sleeping patterns. So someone might not talk about the fact that they're feeling stressed or they're feeling overwhelmed, but they may be talking about the fact that they're really struggling with sleep. And sleep can have a huge impact on our mental health and well-being. And as we've spoken about, there are a number of reasons why our sleep may get disrupted. So, for example, having a new baby, or you know, having stuff that's keeping us up at night, so worries or concerns. What we tend to do as human beings when we're finding things difficult is we do tend to withdraw, and we also tend to avoid certain situations. So avoidance becomes a coping strategy, which in the short term can be quite helpful, but actually in the long term can have a real negative effect on us and also for our well-being. So if you notice that people are avoiding certain situations, meetings, events, it may be that you know, there is an underlying reason for that. And also recognizing that symptoms may persist for more than a few days. So one of the questions that we train is to ask, how long have you been feeling like this? Okay. And what that does, we've spoken about self-awareness today, that asking someone, how long have you been feeling like this? It brings it into their own awareness. You know, I don't know about you, but I know I've had a backache before, and I've just kind of trundled on through trying to deal with my backache. And it's not until someone says, oh, how long have you had that backache for? And then suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, actually it's been a while, I should do something about that. And this is where, you know, similarly with mental health, is asking that question, we can help bring it into that person's awareness, and help them to see that perhaps they need to do something about it. Okay. And the final one that we've got on there is low energy. And, you know, a lot of people that I've spoken to that have experienced poor mental health have said that, you know, they haven't done anything and yet they still feel extremely exhausted. And we know that, you know, anxiety, if you imagine feeling on edge, that can lead to us feeling exhausted, just that feeling of being on edge. Now, the final one I've left blank because I was going to open it up to yourselves and ask you, what do you think's missing? Is there anything missing that you think would be a sign that someone may be finding things difficult, or a sign of poor mental health? Anyone got any thoughts that they would pop in that final box? Yes. Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Is it Danisa? Have I pronounced that right? Are you okay to come off mute?
Yes.
Hello.
Hey, Emma, it's Danica.
Oh, Danica, thank you so much. Yes. Oh my goodness, I can totally relate to this one. This is that kind of snapping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Short-tempered, or just being on edge.
Yeah.
I see that in myself, but yeah, I notice it in others a lot as well.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And so what we would call that is almost like your stress signature. So once you've got that awareness as to what it is that has an impact, you know, how do you spot the signs in yourself? So as I said, you know, definitely a short-tempered, the snappiness. That's something that I experience. A lack of patience is something that I experience as well. So being able to recognize our own stress signature and recognizing it in others can really help to prevent things from escalating. Yes, yeah, challenges in relationships as well there, Claire, and change in attitude as well. So these are all things that we need to be looking out for. And this is where something that can be really helpful is having a wellbeing action plan in place. So essentially, a wellbeing action plan is kind of like having a personal development plan. So what you have is before something stressful were to occur, you've actually had a conversation, you know, with your colleague or the person that's working for you, and you're having a conversation to say, actually, you know, how would I know if you're experiencing stress? What signs should I be looking out for? And having in that wellbeing action plan, you can also have things in there around what helps someone when they're experiencing stress. So for me, it's walking the dog. For me, it's talking things through. You know, being able to talk and process what's going on for me, and also reprioritizing. So in my wellbeing action plan, I would have those points in there, that stress signature, what to look out for, and also how can someone help me get back on track. So it could be, you know, remind me that actually reprioritizing is really helpful, and then take the dog for a walk. So important things to be aware of. Now we're going to move into so a lot of people that we train, a lot of managers that we speak to is kind of, what do I say? What's helpful to say? What should we say? What shouldn't we say? I think we have a fear around saying the wrong thing. So what we've got here, we've got some helpful questions that you could ask, okay? So, you know, how are you doing today? And, you know, pausing after that and allowing that person to open up. What you might get is a bit of deflection or a bit of avoidance. So they might say, yeah, absolutely fine. And it's okay to ask twice. We can ask that question again if we're not sure. And it's okay to say, you know, I'm not sure I've noticed a difference. And the next one is, you seem, what's been happening. So this could be all range of emotions. It could be, you seem, you know, you don't seem yourself. You seem low, you seem sad. What's been happening. And so being able to be observant and be able to reflect back what you're seeing is going to be really helpful. Asking what support do you feel you need, you know, because I think sometimes as managers, we feel that we should provide all the support and it should be on us, whereas actually there may be other support that this person needs, and it may not be all on us as a manager. So again, it could be accessing support through their GP, through their family. So this is a really nice question to ask. What support do you feel you need? And also a lot of people that I've spoken to that experience poor mental health, they often say that people assume what they need. So they get a lot of advice. They get told a lot of stuff, and no one really asks, what do they need? So asking that question is important. Next one would be, what would you like to happen? You know, so if you could change something, what would that be? And what support do you think might help? So again, exploring support. And have you spoken to your GP or looked for help elsewhere? So this is one that we could use, you know, if we've tried exploring and we've asked those open questions, we could ask that. So I'm going to take you back to the poll that we did. So you remember you put your number in. So some of you, it might have been 5, but I think 5 was the majority. So if we go with 5, if that's your number, but think about your number that you put into the poll. And what I want you to think about, this is a really helpful strategy to use, is to think, what would it take? What do you need to help bump you up from a 5 to a 6? What would it be? Okay. And obviously everyone's answer is going to be different because it depends what's going on in your day, what's happening. But it's a really great reflective exercise that you can do with somebody. So asking them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? And what would take you from 5 to 6, for example, and breaking it down into small bite-sized chunks, it makes it less overwhelming. So for example, if I was to say to you, what would it take you to go from a 5 to a 10? Whew, that might be quite a bit to try and deal with, you know, whereas if we go from a 5 to 6, that feels a little bit more manageable. Okay. Now I'm going to ask if anyone, you don't have to share your numbers with me, but has anyone got any ideas around what would help take them up one number on the scale? Anyone got any thoughts? What would move you up? Yeah, more sleep, definitely. So important. Oh, early night. We've got 2 there in there for sleep. Yeah, reprioritize. Yes, let's go from it. Yes, absolutely. Sorry to hear your cat's not well. Yeah. So this, yeah, great point there, Rebecca. You know, we might be thinking actually, where can we delegate? And as Claire said, where can we reprioritize? So sometimes it's, you know, taking that moment just to pause and look at what have we got on our plate right now and what can we do? You know, a question that I often ask myself is, does this have to happen today? You know, does it really have to happen right now and today? Can I bump it? Or can I delegate it elsewhere? Can someone else help me with that? So yeah, thank you for sharing. So another thing that we've got that we share as part of our mental health awareness training and also our mental health first aid training is a short video. Now, I'm trying to remember whether I clicked, hang on 2 seconds, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to share again because I need to share the sound with you. So hopefully you can see. Oh, there we go. Hopefully you can see my screen. So I'm going to play a short video for you. Some of you may have seen this before. I've watched it so many times and I just think it really hits home how we can have great conversations. So some of you may have heard of someone called Brené Brown. And she is a researcher around emotions and also shame. And she put together this great animation, which really helps us to think about how we have conversations. Okay, so I'm hoping this is going to work. Let me know if it doesn't. I'm going to put myself on mute and hopefully you'll hear the sound. Here we go.
So what is empathy and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that video. I'm wondering if you can relate to the at least statements, whether you've had someone say an at least statement to you before. So yeah, share your thoughts in the chat. Let us know if you want to unmute and tell us your thoughts about the video. That's good too. Yeah, thank you. So it really, you know, the reason we use this video in our mental health training is just to really realize that actually, although we're almost programmed to try and help people find solutions and try and fix things. Actually, what people really need is connection. They really need to feel connected at work. They need to know that someone's going to listen and that they're going to provide support. And actually, what listening can do is it can really help someone become unstuck. So if you're working with somebody and you're finding that they just seem to be stuck, it may be that they feel that they haven't been heard. And we can use that as an opportunity to really hear what's going on for them and potentially signpost them to be able to get additional support in their situation. So yeah, really, thank you, Liv. Good reminder about connection. And that's that psychological contract that we can have with our teams as a line manager. You know, people will work and be more loyal and produce and be productive when they know that they have a great connection with their line manager. So I would say take the pressure off when it comes to mental health, thinking that you need to know all the answers and have all the answers, because actually sometimes listening and having that connection really is enough. So a great little watch there. So that's what I'm going to do with you now is I'm going to share some best practice. So these are some things, so kind of a checklist, just thinking about what are you doing right now and how you can help. So in your organization, in your team, what you really need to be doing is this regular check-in. So we've spoken about that today, and you've got a tool that you can use. So the 1 to 10, what would take you up a scale? That regular check-in, and that's how we can spot any differences. Co-create realistic deadlines and regularly review. So this helps manage workplace stress as far as workload is concerned, because if we're regularly reviewing and making sure that deadlines are appropriate, that's really going to help reduce stress in the workplace. Clearly communicate job objectives. So really making sure that when you are sharing a task or something, or a project or something like that, making sure that you've communicated it in a way that that person can understand, and that you've checked that that person has fully understood what it is that they need to do, because we're all different and we all communicate in different ways. So it's important that we check to make sure, and if we need to follow up with meeting notes or something like that, that can help too. Something that can really create uncertainty and enhance anxiety is feeling as though something's not quite right and the problem hasn't been dealt with head on. So one of the things that's recommended for helping prevent poor mental health at work is dealing with problems as soon as they arise. So having those conversations, not putting off conversations, having them when they arise, because we know that this can lead for people not sleeping, not eating well, because of the stress or the anxiety around that impending conversation that they're going to be having. So dealing with things as they arrive is important. Thinking about the level of job responsibility, and this I think is about working in collaboration with your team, understanding, their level of responsibility, making sure that job descriptions are right, role profiles are right, and making sure that your team are working at the right level is going to be important for levels of stress. And the final one we've got here is encourage participation from the whole team. So we know that connection is key. So encouraging your team to connect with one another can also really help wellbeing at work too. The one that's not on there, which I would really encourage, is training. So learning, training, helping your teams learn about their own mental health and wellbeing, helping them learn about stress, what it is, how to recognize it. That means that people are learning to help themselves, and it creates a really great culture where people can talk about what they're experiencing. And a quote that we've got here, I'm just going to share this quote with you. So this is from the CIPD, and they tell us that managers who regularly ask their staff how they are and take an interest in their team's lives outside of work are more likely to build trust and therefore effectively prevent and manage stress at work. Okay, so those check-ins, those conversations are so important. So making sure that we prioritize those. Okay, so we've come to the end of today's session. So you've got a couple of things to think about. The first thing, which was what's going to take you up a scale. So I hope you take some action on that. So moving you up from a 5 to a 6 or whatever that is, because you're only going to be as helpful to your team as you are if you help yourself. So that's one of your actions. But also, I'm really keen to hear whether you want to share it in the chat or whether you want to unmute. After today's session, what one thing are you going to do differently? What's going to change as a result of attending today's session? Anyone like to share? What are you going to change? Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Those one-to-one check-ins, regular check-ins, so important. Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Going to check in. Yes, yeah, really good point there, Kimberly, because people are really good at masking. Sometimes we really don't know what's going on for somebody. Yeah. Have a conversation with your own line manager about what you need. Yeah, this is your permission to do that. Sometimes people feel they need permission, don't they? It's like, here you go, take it today. That's your permission. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us for today's session. What we'll do now is I'm going to stop recording and we're going to open up for question and answer session. So I'll do that now. I'll stop recording. There we go.